Places like this are few and far between these days. In fact, in the UK, there are less than 5 of us left. With that in mind, perhaps you might like an insight into one of the last remaining video stores in the country. So join me, Dave Wain, and let me take you inside the video store. Welcome to Snips, everybody. I get messages from a lot of people outside Merseyside, which is where we're located, be it throughout the UK or worldwide, and they kind of wish they could pay a visit. Well, hopefully in this medium, then it kind of brings you a little closer to the store, albeit through the 1080p glare of your smartphone, laptop, or big screen TV. Every episode will carry the same format. We'll tweak it a little bit week by week, but hopefully it'll give you a glance at the incomings, outgoings, movers and shakers from inside this movie lover's paradise. But without no further ado, let's get on with this week's new release. This is what's come into the store this week, and we have to start with this one. If offended, please stay away. Eating Miss Campbell, from Sheffield's finest, Liam Regan, his second film. It's gloriously offensive. It's low budget. It's made in partnership with Troma. More about them later. And already it's out on loan because my customers seem to be very sick. It's great. It's great fun. But like I say, just be wary, don't watch it with your granny. If that is out on loan, then maybe go to Liam's first film, Banjo, which was shot a few years ago, but we have it here in Blu-ray. It's about a guy who snaps his, yeah, well, you can watch it yourself anyway. The main film, the mainstream movie of the week, is this pretty decent, you liked it, didn't you, Jake? Decent little rom-com called Anyone But You. The director, a guy called Will Gluck, who you may be familiar with his best film, which is a film called Easy A with Emma Stone from 2010. Really cool film. But this is actually a really decent movie. And the problem I've been having recently, you'll switch on your streaming services, be it Netflix, Prime, or wherever, and you'll be inundated with rom-coms and lightweight material. But physical media is really having a dearth of that kind of thing. I get customers coming in and they just want to chill, and all I'm giving them is misery and depression. Well, in more ways than one. And there's no sort of frothy 90-minute movies anymore, and so it's so good to see this, and especially one of such good quality. Next we have Race for Glory, Audi versus Lancia. The car movie has been popular for 60, 70 years, way back with the hot rod films of the 1950s. And certainly with the popularity of Gran Turismo, Michael Mann's Ferrari, Ford versus Ferrari, it's not going to go away. This is perhaps not of that league, but it does have Daniel Bruhl in the lead role, who of course was in Ron Howard's Rush about a decade and a half ago. Next up we have two titans of film history. We have Abel Ferrara, his new film, Padre Pio, about the Italian priest. Yeah, an impressive piece of work. And also the newbie from Luc Besson with Dogman, about a guy who, yeah, well, it got critically savaged, to be honest, which is a shame. But I think if you're a Luc Besson fan, you might like it. They're both out on Blu-ray anyway. Now, one of the things that really annoys me is the fact that in the UK we don't get some really good films on physical media. They stay on streaming only. I try and sort of bend that rule by importing from other countries, so at least I do have a physical representation on disc, be it DVD or Blu-ray. One of these came in this week. It's the German Blu-ray of summer of '84. Undoubtedly one of the best horror films of the last 5 years. Yeah, it's great it's on streaming, but we all need a physical copy of it. Not just for the movie, but also for the special features like commentaries and documentaries that are on this too. So glad to have this in the store. Moving on to the boutique releases this week, there's a newbie in the Criterion Collection, which is the Raoul Walsh film, The Roaring Twenties, with Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. Great movie, but Criterion equals class, doesn't it really? You know it, and it's great to have this one on one of the best formats. Nearly at the end with the newbies, we have Room at the Top, Jack Clayton's 1958 drama, one of the first kitchen sink films in the UK, sort of a precursor to the British New Wave that kicked off shortly after it. This is part of Studio Canal's Vintage Classics range. Brilliant range of films, never a bad apple among them, and this is another worthy addition. And finally, from my friends at 88 Films, we have Inspector Wears Skirts 2, the Jackie Chan produced martial arts film, which is kind of a weird fusion of madcap comedy and kung fu, and it's an absolute delight. We've got number 3 and 4 coming next month as well, so look out for them. I know you like a nose. We're all nosy. We all like to know what our neighbours are doing. So I thought you might like a little look at what's been renting this week. All genuine rentals. And it perhaps shows the diversity of what my customers rent. And there's some really interesting picks here. And it's quite inspiring, and it gives me ideas of what to watch. So I love things like this. Perhaps the most surprising thing this week is Ricky O, the story of Ricky, which, believe it or not, I've not rented once, but twice. I have 2 copies of this on loan right now, the DVD and the Blu-ray, which is just nuts. So I don't know how, I don't know why, 2 customers that do not know each other, but I just find that brilliant that they should both rent the same film. So yeah, that's great. Eureka are doing the Lord's work with regard to Far Eastern cinema. So it was really, really pleasing to see Samurai Wolf 1 and 2 get taken out by a customer. That was great. I mean, these editions look so good on Blu-ray. This one especially, part of Eureka's Masters of Cinema range. Yeah, it's great to see stuff like this renting. They're not the cheapest to buy in, so when people flock to them, it's really quite nice. Elaine May is a great director. So it's cool to see Mikey and Nikki renting this week. John Cassavetes and Peter Falk. Sort of the Cassavetes perennial Peter Falk. But they're so great together. Maybe also throw in husbands and a woman under the influence for stuff that they've done together too. But yeah, good to see this going out. Be good to have a really good Blu-ray of that in this country. Controversial pick of the week is The Birth of a Nation, one of our oldest films, 109 years old now, 1915. Yeah, very controversial. So I admire the person that's rented this, because they've got to sit through it for 194 minutes, which is quite the challenge. But yeah, once again, it shows the diversity of people's picks, which is really cool. Shout out to Lucy, who rented A Girl Walks Home at Midnight, the Iranian vampire film in black and white. Again, not everyone's cup of tea, but it's really nice to see people gravitating towards left field, art house, wonderful world cinema. So that's really cool. White Dog, Samuel Fuller's amazing film, great director. I do fully recommend a deep dive into Sam Fuller. I've got a couple of his box sets here, so that's yeah, that's a good pick. Visconti, Rock and His Brothers, bit of a rarity now, I think. This one from 1960, important piece of Italian new wave. Then of course Lone Star, John Sayles' masterpiece, which is currently out on loan with our esteemed cameraman Jake. and it is brilliant. John Sayles, I could talk about John Sayles for a long time. The lack of attention he gets. He's one of the greatest living filmmakers, made some wonderful, wonderful movies, but he never really seems to get his due. But this has just come out in Criterion, and it is literally one of his well, sorry, it is his best film, but he has many others which aren't far off that quality. One of the best comedies of the 90s, and I'm guessing you've never heard of it, Trojan War. Brilliant. George Wang directed it. He also directed Swimming with Sharks with Kevin, I can't say his name. Trojan War is hysterically funny. Jennifer Love Hewitt in one of her first roles. Brilliant. If you've not seen this 90s comedy, it's excellent. I'm hoping the guy that rented it loves it as much as I do, because it's great. Cool soundtrack as well. And then finally, The Greasy Strangler, second time out in as many weeks. It might well have the same effect that it had on dear Kai, who watched this film a couple of weeks back and said it was the greatest film he's ever seen in his life. Or words to that effect. Wonderful film. I hate the term cult classic because it tends to put too much pressure on a film, and we tend to judge films too early, whereby cult classics should only really be given after maybe 10, 20 years. But this prematurely does deserve the term cult classic. It's a brilliant, weird, and wonderful film. I am a label fetishist. I fetishize labels. I just do. They appeal to me. I like it when you have them all together in a line, the same spine, same logos. Wonderful. We started the show with Liam Regan's new film, Eating Miss Campbell, on the Troma label. So I thought, well, for the sake of synergy, I thought, well, why not stick with Troma, and maybe I can give you a quick guide to our Troma section here at Snips. Definitely one of my favorite sections. A bizarre range of films. Some don't work too well. Some work just great, and some are masterpieces. If you came into Snips today and you said, Dave, give me a couple of Troma movies to rent, it's a tough choice. But here's a few that I'd probably go for. If you've never seen any Troma movie, then you start with The Toxic Avenger. That's the rules. You start here. Toxic Avenger 1, 2, 3, and 4, great place to begin. Maybe Romeo and Juliet as well. Troma's version of Romeo and Juliet, obviously. Yeah, that's another pick. Surf Nazis Must Die, another one. Also, Troma had a habit, or have a habit, of acquiring films. So they'll pick up low budget movies from around the world and they'll slap the Troma badge on it and put it out under their name. Some of these are really, really cool. Definitely one of the best in recent years is a film called The Taint, here on Blu-ray. It's very cool, very funny, and very sick. Low budget wise, Yeti, A Love Story is well worth a look, as is Decapitated, brilliant backwards slasher movie. And also, if you like a good dark comedy, then I recommend Lolly Love, which is a partnership between former husband and wife James Gunn, who of course now directs movies for spandex people, and Jenna Fisher, who was in The Office. So that's worth a look. But if you're asking me, what is the pinnacle of the Troma collection, then there's only one movie for me. And it's probably in my top 3 movies of all time. It's Poltergeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. It's a zombie chicken musical, and it's absolutely wonderful, hysterical, and then you will rush out and buy the soundtrack. You know, what more do you want? That's Troma. This section I like to call Sleeping Giants. One of the funny things about having 16,000 films in stock is that you realize that there are some that get neglected, like the orphaned children of the video store. they kind of, just kind of fade away into the background, and they never get the attention that they deserve. I've got a soft spot for those films, and there's hundreds of them. I love recommending great films to my customers. There's always some that they just escape your mind, just escape your brain. And I thought, well, wouldn't this be a great opportunity to highlight some of them, especially if they're not streaming. So first up, brilliant film, directed by Nacho Vigalondo, Spanish. It's a mind twister. It's called Time Crimes. Now this one, it's probably rented more than the other two that I selected for today, but it's a brilliant film. It will absolutely melt your brain. Such is the complexity and the genius of it. It's an absolute delight. And if you're a fan of foreign language films and you're a fan of thinking, I know a lot of people aren't these days, I would definitely recommend it. So yeah, that is my first pick for Sleeping Giants this week. Second pick, again, not streaming in the UK, is it wasn't critically loved, but I think time's been kind to it, to be honest. I know many of my customers are a fan of David Lynch, and this is a Lynchian film, albeit Jennifer Lynch, his daughter. Yeah, it's no Boxing Helena, let's say that. Surveillance is dark. It's a bona fide B movie. Bill Pullman stars, Julie Ormond stars, and yeah, it's a gritty, grisly, dark film. I would recommend taking a punt on. Certainly if you're renting 3 films for a $5, I would recommend, if you're short of one, then give this a go. Finally, for this segment, I'm going to recommend a weepie. Now, I know what you're thinking, that perhaps I don't look like a guy that likes weepies, but I think you're wrong. And this is great. It's a true story, and it's a rare true story as well, because it was made, as a lot of these true stories are, they're made for cable TV in America. This one was made for TNT. It stars William H. Macy. It's the true story of a guy with cerebral palsy, and he desperately wanted to be a door-to-door salesman, and against all odds, he managed to do it. And this is his story. It's a brilliant film, really inspiring, and I don't think anyone has ever rented it in 20 years, so maybe you might be the first. When I first asked people what they'd like to watch in something like this, the most popular response was they'd like to see a tour. I could do a tour, but it would probably last till next week, because I'd want to pick out every single film in the shop and tell you a little bit about the history of it and things like that. So I thought what we'd do, each episode, we could do like a different section, a different aspect of the shop. So piece by piece, you'd get a complete tour, but in detail, and hopefully not too boring. So the first week, I've gone for the documentary section. Possibly the most boring section in the store, but it's not, because the documentary section is filled with dust. It's filled with loads of amazing films, amazing documentaries, really passionate documentaries, and stuff that you could get lost in there. It's far from the staid and boring documentary that you might have seen, I don't know, 20 years ago on the BBC or something. These are a couple of my picks anyway. If you're browsing the documentary section, this is what I would recommend to you. Certainly, Adjust Your Tracking. Brilliant documentary about the VHS craze, and also, just people's passion for physical media. Really do love that. Eurocrime is Mike Malloy's documentary about the Eurocrime wave of movies in Italy throughout the very late 60s and 70s. Fagbug is fantastic. A girl in a rainbow-coloured VW Beetle going across America, and the reactions that she gets, it's great. For the sociopaths among us, we have I Think We're Alone Now, which is a kind of funny but also very depressing documentary about the obsession behavior that people get into with regard to superstars and people in the spotlight. This one concerns Tiffany, hence the title, I Think We're Alone Now. King of Kong is just amazing fun. It's an essential documentary. This is probably, yeah, the one I would direct you to first of all if you were heading this way. Other great film-orientated documentaries are Not Quite Hollywood, which looks at the Ozploitation craze that had Brian Trenchard Smith and other people as part of it. Mark Morris's Video Nasties documentary that he did with Jake West, two stunning, hugely packed DVDs that cover all the DPP 72 or whatever they call them, the band culture, Merry Whitehouse and Tories. It's always the Tories. And finally, possibly my favourite documentary of them all, and I would sense it's one that you haven't seen. It's a documentary called Bill Cunningham in New York, and it's a little thing about this great photographer who just the most eternally cheerful person on the planet. His interactions with people and just biking across New York City well into his 80s. It's a wonderful, life-affirming piece of film. It was one of my dad's favourite documentaries too, so as he instigated this whole thing, then perhaps that's the best film to end on this week. Thank you for tuning in to the debut episode of Inside the Video Store. Maybe you can give Snips Movies a follow on Instagram or Facebook, or if you want to follow me, I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter as the Dave Wain. All the relative links are below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments and questions on any subject, or maybe you've got some ideas that we could do for the show. But nevertheless, thank you very much for watching, and props for staying till the end.